Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in for today's panel. Here we have a very interesting topic, and it's diversity in marketing. We have the three most experienced digital marketers here today. First, we have Candace. She is a creative consultant and the active member of the advisory board for Creative Equals. Second, we have Beca. She is the founder and president of Socialite. And third, we have HubSpot's very own inbound success coach, Hélène. So in terms of branding and campaign creation, Candace, looking back into your experience, especially previously working for Ogilvy and Hill and Knowlton Strategies, how has the perception of diversity in marketing changed throughout the years? And how did diversity become an important topic for you?
Okay, very good question. A big question. I'm almost tempted to go even further back in my career because it is something that I think, and I talked about blind spots earlier. I had a lot of blind spots because there were points in my career, like earlier when I worked for Digitas back in America, where I was the only female creative director in the whole organization. And to be honest with you, I didn't even notice. It wasn't really talked about. And I think there was no kind of input on what the stats overall in the industry were and what the kind of not just gender balance, but diversity of all kinds. And so in our more current era, we've at least taken a real hard look at the industry. So I've been in London for about 15 years, and the topic has just grown year on year. I'm not sure we've solved it or we've come, especially again in creative departments, diversity has always been very low. And at least we're now starting to measure. I think that's one of the reasons that I'm such a fan of Creative Equals, is because their equality standards sets out to start working with agencies to, first of all, measure and then make a roadmap to improve. Now, I think diversity is important because it is really, really critical that any brand, so if agencies are helping brands talk to their consumers, you have to reflect that actual consumer that you're talking to and not pretend that it's some idealized version, something that harks back to the 50s. So it has to be quite relevant to the modern era. And you get better work, you get better creative work out of that. So if your creative teams are diverse and everyone really working on the brand has those different viewpoints, you're going to come up with a lot better communication because it won't be just one point of view from the same homogenous kind of people.
Yeah, and I guess for the other speakers, in your opinion, how has the perception of diversity changed for you in your industries? Beca or Hélène?
So when I started in the industry about 10 years ago, I think my focus was very much on the idea of more women in the workplace. When I started Socialite, for me, it was about sort of paving a way for more female marketers to gain visibility, to be part of a team, to be seen and heard, and to feel like they are important. So at some point, we did a lot at the company to ensure that we were mostly looking at female employees. And I think as we did that, we actually, unfortunately whitewashed our own team. And when you look at our team now of 38 individuals, we are a team mostly of white women. And this is something that it took us a long time to realize and to recognize. And this is something that in the start of, or at the start of the BLM movement, we were publicly called out for this. And as brand marketers, as what Candace said, we cannot create campaigns. We cannot create strategies. We cannot help our brand clients if we are unable to speak to, audiences outside of who we are as individuals. So now understanding that diversity, in campaigns is not possible unless your team is diverse, unless you have varied opinions, varied experiences, and you have a team of people who, as individuals, can bring something new and exciting to the table because they come from a different culture, or they come from a different environment, or their experience or their education was different. So that really, when we are creating these marketing strategies and marketing campaigns for our brand clients, we are able to reach more audiences, wider audiences, and more diverse audiences.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. And Helen, knowing that HubSpot is like the forefront of digital marketing, what are some examples of, HubSpot campaigns that they've done in general?
Yeah, so I love what you were both saying before. I definitely think as well that representation is something which is extremely important, because also it's funny what you were saying, Beca, because when you're recruiting, you always tend to, have preferences for people who resemble you, because you feel connected to them. And that's why it's so important to have like a diverse representation to be able to connect to everyone and, work with a diverse set of clients as well. And I feel really lucky to have been working at HubSpot because they have so many initiatives for this, and they're so proactively pushing like us to think of inclusion and diversity and to really like embody those values. And so some of the initiatives that we have, for example, a discussion group among the marketing team, which is called the Middle Seats, and it includes 2 discussions per month around a topic on the theme of diversity and inclusion. It can be microaggressions, mental health, racism, body positivism, anything. And what I think is really great is that they make it inclusive by asking every time a different member to come up with a piece of content and host the session. So, for example, I could, feel really strongly about, mental health, and I would bring a video which touched me and which I feel really strongly about, and then like everyone would have a discussion around that. And I think that that's great because it really creates an inclusive environment where everyone takes ownership of this initiative as well. And it really helps everyone become allies as well to the topic of diversity and inclusion. So that's one example.
Thank you. Thank you. So now moving on to influencer marketing and content creation. A lot of brands today spend thousands, if not millions, on influencer marketing. And Beca, knowing that Socialite is the first influencer casting agency ever, how important is diversity in influencer marketing? And what are some examples you've seen from your content creators?
Yeah, of course. It's as important as the makeup of your employees, as I was mentioning earlier. As a marketer working with various types of influencers, we cannot reach certain audiences if we do not have certain types of influencers creating content on behalf of our brand partners. So if we're sitting here, creating a strategy for a brand or a product or a service, and we want to reach a wide group of consumers, we really have to work with a larger, more diverse group of influencers. If you consider the fact that influencers typically reach audiences that are similar to them, people engage with people who are more similar to them than, not, then if we work with influencers who are, again, maybe whitewashed, or we are not considering different, diversities of influencers, whether that is, race or sexual preference or, religious preference or any other sort of category of diversity, then we want to make sure that we are working with the types of influencers who reach those certain audiences. For us, I think diversity is number one, but what's more important for us is making sure that we are actually not putting people into boxes. One of, my biggest fears as we, have started talking about diversity more and more in a more open way at the office is looking at someone like an influencer and making an assumption, based on what they look like, that they might be of a certain race or a certain background, or again, a certain sexual preference. And what we don't want is, to say we need 50 influencers and 2 have to be like this and, 3 have to check this box and 5 have to check this box. That is not what we want to do. We want to make sure that we have, as many unique voices talking about various brands, products, and services so that, again, we're reaching wider audiences.
Totally agree with what Beck was saying. And like, there's so many interesting examples, or some not so good. Again, I think it's very easy for both agencies and clients, frankly, to jump to stereotypes, or just like if whiskey brands are sending Instagram photographers to Scotland, it's three white guys because that's just an assumption. Or for years, I know of one client who is baby products, and they would only talk to moms, and therefore they would only want mom bloggers and then mom vloggers. And you try to say, but there's dads in that equation somewhere. Do you not want to include the dads? And I think, again, if you, as Beck was saying, reach beyond the sort of expected, there's one excellent case from several years ago, but a very famous case where Carphone Warehouse had wanted to get a review of the new Samsung phone, but they didn't just pick a tech YouTuber. They picked the Chicken Connoisseur, who is a London-based guy, totally charming guy, who reviews chicken restaurants. But he and his audience were the right audience for that particular new phone. And it was hysterical what he did with it. And it was very unexpected, so very engaging and very humorous, versus a more hardcore tech review type of creator on YouTube. So I think there's so many possibilities when you look beyond the stereotype or the expected.
So knowing that influencer marketing is just a small part of digital marketing in general, but it always takes a whole creative team to create it. So let's dive deeper into the team level. So Helen, as an inbound success coach at HubSpot, how do you incorporate topics of diversity in training, and how do you approach it?
So within my team, what has really worked is definitely roundtables. So I know that that's what we've been organizing a lot, and that we typically start off with typically kick off with a humble admission that we are all learning and that we are all biased, to really, ensure that we have a climate of trust and a safe environment. And what we like to do is always, like I was saying, kind of like center the discussion around the topic, and have, several different questions about this subtopic, just because we know that some people can be more introverted and more shy and, more reluctant to answer, open questions. Whereas if you were to tell them, okay, have a look at this video, what does this kind of, make you feel like? Then it's easier to get everyone to participate and everyone to feel included. And that's definitely the first thing, because as you were saying before, like, it's important to bring up the topic of diversity and inclusion, but it's also important, to have like everyone feel like they're actually included in the training itself, so that's definitely something that we do. We also typically ask people to take ownership of the training and to bring in their own questions, to watch videos and to bring their insights to the team. And it just follows that model of when everyone kind of gets involved, you become more like allies, and then you become more self-aware yourself and more inclined to promote diversity and inclusion among the company, and to hold yourself accountable as well. So that would be the mindset in which we approach those trainings among my team.
How do you incorporate topics of diversity in your training, especially just at a small team level?
I think some of it is what the HR people like to call teachable moments, which is things that happen over the course of the day where, again, you might be working on a project and you might just go, hey, have we considered who our list of photographers is? Or have we considered who are some of the partners we're working with? And might we look outside the expected norm a little, shake it up a little? I think for one thing that's really helpful, no matter what you're doing, is to try to do some first party research. So if the team is able to, whether it's focus groups or some other kind of research, which actually helps reveal the diversity of the target audience for that particular brand or client, that helps open eyes a little and getting away from maybe the way it's always been done. And that does help. I think the amount of attention it's getting now is quite good, but that needs to translate into action. So there's quite a lot of talking about it, but has real change really happened in all these different organizations? That's the key.
To wrap up our conversation, so today, considering the pandemic and Black Lives Matter, and most companies are having, or if not starting, conversations about inclusion and diversity in the workplace and how they approach marketing in general. What are some of your last minute tips and advice for marketers who just want to make that first step? I would start, Helen. So
I think that something which is really important is actually to also ask other people what they think and how they would like to be, how they would like to have discussions around these topics as well, because that also contributes, to a kind of an environment of inclusion. And, asking people, you've heard about this movement which is going on, and how would you think that I should approach this in an ideal setting? Also, being very humble about the fact that everyone is biased and that, no one is claiming to be like, the person who knows everything, and that everyone is learning. And, really creating that safe environment of trust is extremely important, I think, and encouraging everyone to feel safe telling their thoughts and listening actively and being open to various point of views and various opinions, I think is really the first step in creating that environment, which will allow everyone to take ownership in the topic of diversity and inclusion, and little by little start creating as well their initiatives of their own and all become more engaged.
Thanks. And to the other speakers as well, any last minute advice for marketers just to, make that first step?
Sure. Well, I think definitely measure. You have to do an audit of both how your teams are structured, how your organization is structured, what kind of diversity, what kind of inclusion is factual. The way that most companies analyze their profit and loss, and they can tell you year on year what changed, week on week, day by day, sales figures and whatnot. You've got to do the same with any kind of diversity and inclusion program. So again, get away from the PowerPoint and into more a numerical database counting or auditing. And I think for brands in terms of their marketing, to audit every piece of creative you've made for the last 2, 3, 4, 5, however many years, put it all up on the wall, metaphorically or in real life, and start to go, is this reflective of our target audience? Is this truly who we are and who we're talking to? But they have to analyze it and look at it and truly, research it like they would another part of their business. So measure, and then you can improve.
Beca, any last minute thoughts?
Yeah. So for Socialite, given that in the past decade, so much has changed in influencer marketing, when I think back to the beginnings of, bloggers receiving opportunities for brands at first in the gifting capacity and then in a more paid capacity, and with the launch of other social platforms and the launch of, data-driven analytics, we have really had to take a step back and remind brands that there is still a humanity aspect in what we do, right? As marketers, as people who are trying to create content and campaigns and strategies that reach other individual people. One of the things that, influencers or creators, whatever you want to call them, do best is engage their own audiences, because it's a human to human interaction. And I think what we've had to do as an office environment is also remind ourselves that we are all human. We're a team of 38 humans. And despite the fact that we do all have biases and we all do have, various different backgrounds, one of the things we realized is that our team really wasn't speaking to each other on a human to human level. They were working with each other and they were, collaborating and cooperating, but we didn't know a lot about our own team until, BLM. We had people come forward and say, hey, I'm actually mixed race, or you might not know this about me, but I'm half Black, or you may not know this about me. This is my sexual preference. And it's those conversations that allowed us as a team and as a company to engage more with our own, individual humans and have these conversations, have a more open platform. And we talked a lot about creating an internal diversity committee, and we actually decided against it because we thought that it was actually not inclusive to have a diversity committee, and that it was more beneficial for us as a team to, again, recognize the humanity in each other and try to create a space where there is just open dialogue, and open conversation about, this is who I am and this is what I'm willing to share with you because, my human recognizes the human in you.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone's time. Wow, those were some great stories. Thank you to all of our speakers for covering such an important topic in our industry. And thank you for listening. But don't go just yet. You're right in the middle of Engage. So get ready for more sessions and speakers coming your way. Keep in mind that you have a lifetime access to Engage. And don't forget to give us a shout out by using the Socialbakers Engage hashtag. And feel free to reach out by clicking on the button on the top right. If you're not watching on the Engage website, please email us at engage@socialbakers.com. Thanks again for joining us and see you soon.